Now, the United Nations is flying its flags at half-staff and will observe a minute of silence on Monday to honor UN staff killed or wounded in Gaza. This was the scene outside the office in Bangkok. On Friday, the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees, UNRWA, announced that 101 of its employees had been killed in Gaza since the start of the war. And this is the United Nations University in Tokyo. These scenes will be repeated at UN offices around the world on Monday. The organization has confirmed the number of deaths of its staff is the highest killed in any conflict since the UN was formed in 1945. Well, let's speak to Juliette Touma, who's UNRWA's Director of Communications. She's joining us from occupied East Jerusalem. Juliette, good to have you with us again on Al Jazeera. So 101 UNRWA humanitarian workers killed in the Gaza Strip since October 7th. Tell us about who they were and how your work has been impacted.
Yes, these are our dear colleagues and our dear friends. More than 100 of them have been killed. They were mainly teachers, but also school principals, one doctor, a number of engineers, support staff, people who were in charge of safety, for example. Many of them were killed with members of their families. Some were killed while they were on their way to bring bread for their families. It's a global day of mourning for the United Nations as we remember those colleagues and we pay tribute to their service at UNRWA.
How has your work on the ground been impacted by these deaths and the injuries that your colleagues have sustained?
This is only one challenge that UNRWA is facing. We're being hit from different directions. The war itself is definitely one challenge. The siege and the tightening of the siege and the restrictions that we have on the number of trucks that we are able to bring in, very little. No fuel. Fuel is running out for UNRWA, the largest humanitarian agency. And then the shelters, I mean, we're close to 800,000 people now taking shelter under the very same flag that is being lowered around the world this morning. They came to those UN facilities, UNRWA facilities, in search for protection and for safety.
Yeah, you talked about the siege and the safety of people who have sought shelter at UN schools that have been bombed. So what is the focus of your work right now, given these difficult conditions on the ground, the siege in Gaza City, the siege around hospitals there? What are you focusing on right now?
Look, on our facilities that were impacted, we can confirm that more than 60 have been impacted. Most recently, yesterday, one of our guest houses where we have staff sleeping and staying in the Gaza Strip, that they received 3 direct hits yesterday morning, and we were very lucky because it was just an hour and a half after our staff left that guest house and went to work. So this is increasing. 70% of those facilities that were impacted happened south of Wadi Gaza. So in fact, in the middle areas or in areas like Khan Yunis or Rafah in the south, it's an indication that nowhere in Gaza, nowhere is safe, not the north, not the middle, and not even the southern areas.
Yeah.
Our focus right now is to provide assistance to those families who came to seek refuge and protection under the very same UN flag that was lowered this morning.
Yeah. As you say, nowhere is safe, and many Palestinians were told to move from the north to the south for their safety. I know that some of our colleagues had to move. Have your colleagues from UNRWA also left the northern parts of Gaza City and all these areas which are under heavy bombardment and are now in the south?
Yes. Many of our staff, 13,000 of them, many were forced to flee as part of the forced displacement of the Palestinian communities across the Gaza Strip. So they are like the rest of the communities. However, many of them are still there. Many of them are still serving and providing to the communities under very challenging circumstances. And we also had staff who were there when the exodus happened over the past few days of mass populations moving, forced to flee forced to flee their homes in Gaza City and in the north. And they reported scenes that resembled very much the 1948 war.
Yeah.
People arrived after walking on foot for hours, dehydrated and exhausted.
Right. When you see, Juliette, what's happened over the past 5 weeks, the death toll of more than 11,000, the mass exodus, as you say, newborn babies being removed from their incubators, did you ever imagine it would reach this level?
It's unprecedented on all levels. It's unprecedented, not only operationally for us, it's extremely challenging, but the death toll, including among our colleagues and staff at UNRWA, the challenges that we're facing in terms of the very, very tight siege, the restrictions that we have on our operations, and the fact that we don't have fuel. It's a very simple thing that we need to have so that we can drive our cars and trucks and reach people with the assistance they need. Even that we don't have.
Juliette, thank you very much for taking the time to speak to us. Juliette Touma is the spokeswoman for UNRWA, the UN's refugee agency for Palestinians, live there in occupied East Jerusalem.